Today we are so excited to welcome the Royal Chicano Air Force to San Joaquin Delta College. This is a group that was active in the 1960s Chicano movement that used both art and humor to further the cause. We have a wide range of presenters here today. They're all a part of the Royal Chicano Air Force. That means that they were artists and activists in the 1960s. Some of them are printmakers, some of them are muralists, some of them are poets, and we also are really excited to welcome some folks that were active right here at Delta College and in Stockton during the Chicano movement of the 1960s and 70s. So we're looking forward to hearing from them about their work and also their connection to the farm workers or the campesino movement, the United Farm Workers Association. Our campus in San Joaquin Delta College is 50% Latino, Latinx, Latina, Hispanic. All of these words sort of mean something similar. And we want to make sure that students here and our community feel represented and see themselves as a part of our history because they are a part of our history. We also want to share this history widely because Chicano history, Chicana history, Chicanx history is US history, and it's important that we all know about it.
Founded in '67 and a founding member of Royal Chicano Air Force in 19. He taught Chicano studies at Cosumnes River College before his long-term service as Deputy Director of the California Arts Council. Very instrumental and very important that he was in there. And he was in there to the very last when the director, retired or something like that of the California, and you almost became the very medal director of the California Arts Council, but for whatever reasons, you know.
So near and yet so far.
Well, there's that, and as they say, it's not so much what you know as it is who you know. That's a hard one to swallow, but you know, make sure that you guys stay in touch with everything as far as staying in school, not getting out like I did. I got to 1979, 80, something like that, and I had 12 units short of my master's. And I said, I'm done with this. You know, it's time to start something new. So that's Juan Carrillo. Juan, thank you. Next in line is Juanita Polet. I'd like to say a big thank you to Juana. She was part of that AB, what is it?
2183.
2183 that everybody. Here's the banner that Juana.
You need help?
No, I guess not. Juana, oh yeah, we're back on upside down. We're really together today. Anyway, she's last minute, she put a hit list and says anybody can do some posters and stuff like that. Well, I ain't gonna go print something like this in a week. It's not doable anymore. So I just went over there and laid it out. This is 1966. I was barely 15 years old, and my dad took me out of school and took me to this event when the farm workers did their first march, right? Mm-hmm. And you can see, you know, it was the salt of the earth. And then over here is a recent photo. And so anyway, I was very proud to do this. So we're done with that. Show and tell. And Juanita currently works for the California Rural Legal Association. Foundation. And she'll talk about that. Stan Padilla, originally from small town of Lincoln, such as I, outside of Sacramento, a little further than 8 miles, 12 miles out of Roseville? 20, good Lord.
Right by Hunter Valley.
Oh, there you go, gambler. And his recent RCF mural flight hangs in the Golden One. Those of you who've been to Golden One Center downtown, you can see, and I have a picture of that, which we'll see. Created with Juanishi Orozco, Esteban Villa. Esteban Villa is no longer with us. Montoya is no longer with us. Esteban just recently passed away. And Stan received his degree in art from the San Francisco Art Institute, which I'm sad to say is no longer. in existence, right? It went under. Richard Soto, who's supposed to be here, who lives here, is not here. Okay. And then yours truly, mine, and I was born and raised in Roseville. We went back and forth from Roseville to Sacramento via, whatever events were taking place in Sacramento or whatever events were taking in Roseville. My dad used to drive up to Chico, all the way down to Fresno and stuff like that. And that's it. We can get started. I think, who's next in line?
You're going to introduce your speakers.
I just did. Yeah. Oh, just. Yeah.
Before we hear directly from the speakers, I wanted to again welcome everyone to this incredible presentation. We are so grateful that you are here today. So thank you for being here. We also wanted to take a moment to thank the sponsors of this event. That includes the Chicanx Latinx Faculty Task Force, the Cultural Awareness Program, the Delta College Digital Media students who are joining us today to record this event, so thank you for your talent, and also the Horton Art Gallery, which has brought out of retirement some wonderful posters originally created by folks that are right here in front of you. What an incredible opportunity to see their artwork live. I wanted to also let you know about other events that are happening today. It is the 25th anniversary of the first time that Delta College celebrated Indigenous Peoples Day. We've been doing this for 25 years strong, and directly after this event, you can attend in the President's Patio across the street, watch the Aztec dancers, learn from Indigenous people, and celebrate their long history here on this continent. There's also tacos, so we hope you join us. Get some aguas frescas and tacos. We're raising money for student scholarships. Next week, we hope you join us for Paletas con Profes. There'll be professors and counselors to answer your questions, and so that you can get to know them while enjoying a popsicle, because even though it's October, we all know it's really hot outside, so come and refresh. And we're so proud to welcome you to our Dreamers Success Center grand opening. This Undocumented Student Resource Center assists people who are not only undocumented, but immigrant students and people whose families are mixed status. So join us on that day. Before I hand it back over, I wanted to recognize that this is Indigenous land on this Indigenous Peoples Day and do our land acknowledgement. So we acknowledge that San Joaquin Delta College serves the students and communities on the unceded ancestral homelands of Indigenous peoples, including the Yokuts, the Plains Miwok, the Patwin, and the Nishinan. This land remains inseparable from its Aboriginal stewards. As guests, we recognize that we benefit from living and working on their traditional homelands, and we wish to pay our respects by acknowledging the ancestors, elders, and relatives of the Yokuts, Plains Miwok, Patwin, and Nishinan, including by affirming their sovereign rights as First Peoples. We remain grateful for the rich culture, languages, contribution, and heritage of the First Nations people who lived here and loved here, who raised their families here, who cared for land and life here, who are buried here in marked and unmarked places, and who remain here despite acts of genocide, assimilation, and forced removal. Let us honor them, this land, and all of our life in our thoughts, words, and actions in this place. So on behalf of Delta College, I want to thank you all for being here. I know it means a lot to the students, and it means a lot to me personally, so I appreciate you being here, as well as all of you who showed up, including our distinguished former faculty and our trustees. So on behalf of Delta College, I hope you wear this pin proudly, and I want to turn it back over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Go Delta.
So we'll start off. Juan Carrillo, it's all yours.
Thank you. First, let me thank all of you who are here, and a special thanks to the people that organized today's symposium. My presentation today is entitled The Transformation of a Mexicano. And I hope as you listen to this story, you'll understand, you'll get this transformation that took place in my life, and all of it that brought me here to this moment with you today. It's all been a journey. And I'm hoping that if people in the last rows can hear me. Is that, I see a yes. Can you hear me in the back? They tell you should always speak to the people in the back so that everyone hears. Is this a microphone?
Yes.
Is this better? All right. I was born in Tamazula de Gordiano, Jalisco, a small rural town of less than 3,000 people. The main product produced in Tamazula was sugarcane. Most of the work of the people in Tamazula was in the fields cutting cane or in the Fábrica de Azúcar in town making the actual sugar. I arrived in the U.S. in 1944, but there had been many years of family history in San Francisco. My mother and widowed grandmother initially came from Sinaloa to San Francisco by ship in 1920 to join my grandmother's sister. My grandmother found work and a new Italian husband and had 2 more children. Welcome, Richard. My father and grandfather left for San Francisco in 1925 to look for work. My grandfather died within 7 months, leaving my 16-year-old father alone. And he continued to work, and he brought his mother, his brother, and his sister to live with him. My parents met through the Catholic Church, Our Lady of Guadalupe, through church activities. They married in 1936, and by 1940, they had 2 daughters. Soon thereafter, my mother learned my father had plans to return to Tamazula to start a chicken ranch. She was now pregnant with me. The family departed. The plan soon went awry. All the chickens died of a virus, and my parents were left with no income. It was very tough on my mother trying to care for now 4 children. It was very tough on my father, who could find no work. He chose to return to the United States as a contracted worker in the Bracero program and ended up in Idaho picking potatoes and sugar beet. Within a matter of months, my father ran away, making his stay in the U.S. a very tenuous one. My mother, after her years of struggle, tired of her condition, left Tamazula with all of us returning to San Francisco to be with her mother, who again was widowed. My parents reunited, and it was there in San Francisco's Mission District where I grew up. I was a normal, quiet, and somewhat shy boy. I learned English quickly and without issue. I grew up as a devout Catholic. I was obedient to my parents, teachers, and the church. I acknowledged the hierarchy of life around me. My parents were dutiful, never causing problems with their landlord, bosses, creditors, or the church, or others of greater education, authority, accomplishments, or wealth. We were taught by example to respect and accept authority. We learned of America through magazines, radio, movies, and eventually television. We began and readily assimilated the language, practices, styles, and values of American kids. We did not look at ourselves critically, nor were we taught to look at America's past, its values, its social structure, its discriminatory practices, or class distinctions in any critical way. For me, although a Mexican immigrant, I was taught nothing of Mexico except that we lost the war and half of our country became the U.S. Nothing of my life or my family's life was embedded in American history. I call that the creation of the invisible Mexican. I was Mexican, but no one saw that. I was an American kid, just like so many Irish, Italian, and other kids who were here by virtue of past family immigration. I began to see the cracks in the early 1960s, the Civil Rights Movement, the assassination of John F. Kennedy and Malcolm X, the rise of Cesar Chavez and the farm workers movement, the early and expanding war in Vietnam, the explosion of blues and rock and roll music, new thoughts on the role of women, and the many anti-colonial wars in Asia, Latin America, and Africa. For the first time, critical thinking entered my mind. My curiosity about my heritage grew. I wanted to know more about Mexico and Latin America. The television set was my window into the issues. It challenged my thinking and my sense of who I was. At the age of 24, married with one child, we decided I would attend college full time. I had been an uninspired high school student and wondered how well I would do. After community college, I landed at UC Berkeley. I felt like an outsider. It was a new culture where learning was central to all its inhabitants. I had a lot of catching up to do. It seemed like these young students around me had traits of confidence, brilliance, and accomplishment. I worked hard to keep up, not showing much of any of those traits, but I kept afloat. I would be immediately swept up in the politics of Berkeley. It had a place on the world stage as a political hotbed, having been shut down without any education, any activity on the campus the year before in a struggle over free speech. Now I found myself joining in on the action to remove military recruiters from the student union. This was done as part of a growing anti-war sentiment. The arguments for taking a position made sense. With hesitation and trepidation, I picked up a picket sign for the first time and stood alone at the business school entrance, nervously asking students to go on strike. Soon, the strike ended and I returned to my classes. One day I was walking across Sproul Plaza, passing the multitude of tables set up to recruit people, other students, to clubs, or to get people interested in cultural events, or to recruit for special causes. As I passed one table, a yellow paper was handed to me, and I took it, continuing to walk off the campus. I looked at it, and it was most curious, I tell you. It was a price list for hiring Mexicans for business events, social gatherings, or other occasions. Basically, you could provide a Mexican for any event where you might want one to be present. At the top of the list was a Mexican described as clean-cut and assimilated man wearing a suit, carrying a briefcase, hair cut short and styled, speaking only well-articulated English without an accent. I kept looking down the list, and as I looked at the offerings, each Mexican had additional stereotypic elements added so that you got more Mexicanness for your money. And the prices grew as the stereotypes grew. At the bottom, and most expensive, was a short, Spanish-speaking, sombrero-wearing, mustachioed gordito, carrying a guitar. I stopped in my tracks. I was angry, insulted. I had never been confronted by such an experience. I didn't know whether to just crunch that paper up and throw it away, or return and let these jerks know how angry I was and explain their position. I decided to go back. When I got to their table, I was facing 2 Mexican Americans, confusing me even more. I said, "What the hell is this all about?" One answered, "We were hoping you would stop. We are students and part of a group organizing a new Mexican American student organization here at Berkeley, the first in the history of this university. Last year, a study showed 69 Mexican Americans enrolled here out of 30,000 students. We find that shameful, and we want to change that. We want more Mexican Americans at Berkeley and going to college. We're having a meeting tonight, and we ask you to join us." Now I was really confused. I liked what they said. I took their bait. I walked away, not knowing what just happened. I went home, and following my recounting of the encounter with my wife, she said, "Well, are you going?" I did, and with that, my life changed. We started a journal that got widespread distribution, publishing articles attacking the old canons of sociology, anthropology, politics. We offered a different view of who we were and included poetry and art as well. Over time, we went into the high schools and recruited. We engaged in new art exhibits, supported actions in the field of civil rights, organized conferences, and met with statewide Chicano organizations. On my own, I increasingly joined anti-war efforts, fought for ethnic studies, participated in Chicano artist gatherings, battled for Berkeley land use issues, and became a teaching assistant in the first Chicano studies class at Berkeley. Upon graduation, I took courses to become a credentialed teacher. With my degree and my credential, I applied for and was accepted in a fellowship program at Sacramento State that would lead to a master's degree in education and cultural anthropology. In June of 1969, we moved to Sacramento. The only person I knew of the 20 fellows was a teacher, writer, and artist who I talked to on the phone 2 years earlier to encourage him to submit his poetry and writings for El Grito. He was Jose Montoya, an art teacher living in Olivehurst and teaching in Wheatland, 17 miles outside of Yuba City. Later that school year, the project hired an artist to help with graphic design and to push for his hiring in the art department. He was Esteban Villa, Jose's compadre. They had gone to the College of Arts and Crafts in Oakland in the late 1950s. Esteban had been teaching high school in Linden, a small community 13 miles east of here. I had met Esteban when he was on sabbatical in 1967, when I picked up his art from his garage for publication in El Grito. It was great to be with these two artists that year, spending time talking of politics, art, and all kinds of issues. I watched them with amazement as they undertook the responsibility of developing fundamental ideas of the role of art and the responsibility of artists to make change. They were already committed to the United Farm Workers struggle, as both had grown up in farm working families and knew the importance of change in the fields and rural areas and in bettering working conditions. With the presence of these two artists in our midst, other young artists began to be attracted to their call and presence. The following year, Jose was added to the faculty, and the connection with young art students was clearly evident. The numbers grew, the vision grew, the activism grew, and the group that grew became known as the Rebel Chicano Art Front, the RCAF. One day, noting the initials RCAF, a stranger asked, "Are you the Royal Canadian Air Force?" The answer was, in the humor of the RCAF, "No, we're the Royal Chicano Air Force." And the Royal Chicano Air Force was born, and over the years, much occurred. We founded the Centro de Artistas Chicanos, where production of thousands of prints for the community were made. We assisted Joe Serna, future city councilman and mayor, to elect the first Mexican American to the Sacramento City Council in 100 years. We organized caravans to support the UFW in Delano. We marched with Cesar Chavez. We acted as security for him when he came to Sacramento. We organized art shows, painted murals. We taught in community-based programs for youth and elders. We had mercados. We established fiestas, bringing thousands of people to celebrate our heritage. We organized Mother's Day celebrations and Dia de los Muertos processions to honor our ancestry. We sponsored Christmas celebrations for children. We presented and produced theatrical events. We became teachers, administrators, artists, dancers, actors, poets, musicians, executives of arts organizations and foundations. We established a breakfast program for children. We established a bookstore and gallery. We strengthened links with Chicano artists statewide and beyond. We learned and practiced ancient rituals. Our circle was large and committed to changing the world for our community. We became a large, extended family with traditional Native values at our core. We were humorous with a serious purpose. My journey with the RCAF has been quite a flight. I am a fortunate man for having done so. Almost 55 years have passed, and sadly, many in the circle have passed. The RCAF has at times been described as achieving legendary status. So be it. It has always been our main desire and satisfaction to see a new generation of activists and artists take up the mantle, furthering creativity and justice. As we have said many times, aquí estamos, no nos vamos. Sí se puede.
Thank you, Juan. Next in line is Juanita Pulendo. And again, a big hand for her for giving it to Gavin.
Oh, sorry. I'm just gonna fix that real fast.
It wasn't all.
Buenos días a todos. Even though these dudes right here are part of, what I'm part of, the Royal Chicano Air Force, some of them don't know certain parts of me. Mostly because never have the time to talk about me. We, I say, started way back
I was out of high school, getting out of high school, going to be, I think the career was stenographer, you know, in the courts. Didn't happen because the business school where I enrolled in was a fraud. And so it got closed down. The students got reimbursed their admission fees, and we started looking for a business school that could do what we wanted to do. They told us, hey, why don't you go to Sacramento City College? They have a business school there. We did. Right around that time, Cesar is asking for volunteers to come and join a pilgrimage. It wasn't called a march then. It was a pilgrimage from Delano to Sacramento to come and let the government in Sacramento know the plight of farm workers. At that time, he was organizing. It wasn't a union yet. UFWA, United Farm Workers Organizing Committee. He and Dolores were taking a shot at the first labor contract. Grape workers in Delano, California, Kern County. It was taking time. They needed the workers to stay put on strike, not to go back into the fields. That took effort. Those workers could go back into the fields anytime because they needed to work, because they needed to feed their families and supply their families. So it was one of those things that Cesar was very well known for. Brilliant ideas. Think with brilliant ideas, most people have them, but don't put them into action. Cesar did. He reached out to students, he reached out to volunteers in communities to say, we need you to bring food and supplies to the workers that are on strike so that we can have time to negotiate a contract for them. So that makes sense to me. He talked a lot like my parents, like my family. My family came from the Mexican Revolution. Most people, either their families fought alongside Villa, Pancho Villa, or alongside Emiliano Zapata. In our case, our family members fought alongside both. So they were very, very strong in the farm worker movement in Mexico, the campesino movement in Mexico. My grandparents on my mother's side had 16 children. My grandfather, Daniel Espinosa, had an admiration for the soldaderas, the revolucionarias, the women that in the Mexican Revolution, because many times he would say, not only do they do the same as the men in terms of fighting, but they also do the cooking, and if they have children, they take care of the children. They had more work to do. So he admired them. He was a visionary way before his time. So he named two of his daughters Adelitas, for example, because he admired La Adelita. There was an Adelita that was in between my mother, Maura, and my tia Celia. And then the very last one was an Adelita also. and we have Valentinas, and we have Franciscos, and we have Emilianos, and so forth in the family, and Juanitas, Juana Gallo. We came, you know, up to this point, our generation after generation, the names are kept there. So to me, it was very natural to just jump in and be part of the very first pilgrimage from Delano to Sacramento. And at Sacramento City, I started a huelga table. That's for the lack of creativity, that's what I called it, a huelga table. At that time, UVOC, the organizing, Farm Workers Organizing Committee, had a little newsletter called El Malcriado, which translates into the misbehaved one, right? So I sold stacks of El Malcriado, bumper stickers, buttons. Then it became that wasn't enough. So ended up adding, sold pan mexicano, pan dulce, and so that we wouldn't be kicked out of the campus. I didn't want to compete with the cafeteria, and so didn't sell coffee with the pan mexicano. We made canela, sold canela, and just kept adding. We would buy in bulk, created a committee at Sac City. You can see in the background that some of the committee was, you know, diverse. Why? Because I could count on one hand the Chicanos that were at Sac City at that time. We're talking about 66. And what happened is that there was another group that also was doing the same thing in Yuba City, Olivehurst, Wheatland area. And so we ended connecting, and we would meet periodically in Sacramento. At that time, most of us drove VW vans. So we later on, when we were the RCAF, we connected those to, we call it a fleet. We would meet in Sacramento, go down the 99 to Delano. We didn't have these gadgets at that time, right? So there was always somebody riding shotgun with a huelga flag so that everybody would follow and nobody would get lost. And we had a trail, you know. Anybody wanted to stop at a rest stop, just wave the flag, follow, don't get lost. We would meet at Filipino Hall in Delano, where Cesar and Dolores would be waiting for us. At that point, they would have already workers on their end to get all of the sorted. We would sort out everything before we left, and we had, you know, supplies for different families. They would have the workers to deliver what we took to the striking families. And that's how we did it. And then we always stayed so that Cesar could tell us, and Dolores, our next orders for the next time. And this is how we did it. And this is how we kept the workers from not going back. And this is how the union ended up getting the first contracts for farm workers. So Cesar and Dolores always had a very special part in their hearts for artists. They knew the importance of artists because anything they would say that needs to be communicated anything in communication, which is what they were doing, needs an artist, whether it's a flag, bumper sticker, a poster, a sign, a banner, a button, artists, even entertainment, to keep the workers, stay put for a long day at a picket line. And so we had artists for every medium of the arts, whether they were musicians, whether they were photographers. Don't know if back here, Rudy is showing one of the most important. He started from the very beginning with me at Sacramento City College, and that was Hector Gonzalez. He's been our documenter since then. Then momentarily he went to Vietnam. I credit him with being the first photographer to invent the selfie, because he would send us pictures from Vietnam with the jungle in the back, and he was in the picture. So we were awed. How can that happen? How can he be in the picture if he's taking the picture? And it was all timely. But so I credit him with being the first photographer that did that. He's been our documenter since day one. Hector Gonzalez, we call him Mr. G. We all have nicknames. And so Mr. G is Louis the Foot's brother. And so, along with the musicians, along with the photographers, we had a theater. Recuerdos del Palomar was one of our first plays that Jose Montoya, directed. And I tried acting at that first play. I played Toña la Negra. And go back and research Toña la Negra. She was a great singer at that time. We had graphic artists, we had cartoonists, we had actors, actresses. RCAF also, our cars were always breaking down. Most of us were students on student income. So we ended up with mechanics. We had a garage, RCAF, we had our own mechanics. We also had our own musical group. Freddie Rodriguez, Gloria Rangel, and of course with nicknames, everybody. Gloria was the fish, her sister was the eel. They were the singers of the group. Also, on top of that, not only that we ended up with a garage, mechanics, but on top of that, we also ended up with our own group of dancers, our indigenous group, danzantes, aztecas, Chuy also passed away. We added to it, so it's not, we consider each one of the members of everybody that I just mentioned artists in our own right, including organizing. And very proud to say, I know that some people say, oh, RCAF is not, we don't have a center like a location like we used to have. But one of the things that we do now is because of all these communication gadgets. We work, we're still together, we still network, we still do everything I do in the name of not only UFW, not only California Rural Legal Assistance Foundation, but RCAF. That is my resume. And the other big part, the Dolores Huerta Foundation. This is where I come from. This is what I am. This is, what we've done just recently. It's just part of the journey that we committed ourselves to years ago in the 60s. And that was always to stay there assisting, the labor movement, the workers, especially farm workers, and the artists, which, as you know, were two of the, including some of the mates that were left out of the National Labor Relations Board, NLRA, the labor movement. Now, CESA remedied that here in California with the ALRB, the Agricultural Labor Relations Board, and the Agricultural Labor Relations Act. We need it for the nation. Okay. Don't know if my time is up now, but I wanted to get that in. You can always call me, for whatever you need information or, I'm here and I'll be here. And on behalf of all of our members that are not here physically present, I know that they are still presentes. They're here with us today. ¡Que viva la raza!
Viva! All right, with that said, Juana, thank you so much. Thank you on this campaign that you masterminded, not by yourself, but you were part of the many, present and non-present. So with that said, Stan Padilla, and introduce yourself.
This is a little bit different program than I'm used to. And this oral tradition, and it really shows that in Chicanismo we're not monolithic. This varied experience that we all came together, but to identify and unify under the Chicanismo, a reawakening, a renaissance. So I want to, like Juanita, I usually don't talk about my background or anything, but I'll share a little bit today. I'm going to say we because in our family, we're desplazados, we're displaced people. We left our homeland in southern Arizona, southern New Mexico because of violence, of the revolution, of the American way of life. We ended up in Northern California, and as desplazados, there were no green cards or invitations or anything. We had to make our way in the world. And it really came out of self-sustainability. I grew up with hunters, fishermen, growers. We grew our own food. We did canning. We did farm work, and ranch work, I should say. We were never farm workers in the sense of migrant farm workers. We were ranch workers, and worked with horses, with animal husbandry, and all of that to earn a living. In that sense, we didn't really know who we were. We were workers. We worked 24/7. That's what you did. You just worked. You got up, you prayed, you worked, you took care of your family, and now this is where I'm going to, and that was we in the family. Now I'm going to speak about I. In all of that, I was always different. I was always going, I'm not going to do this all the time. I like to work hard. I want to use my mind. I want to read. I want to learn how to read. I like to read about Bengal tigers and temples in some faraway land. So underneath the trees, or working, especially in the family. We grew up in cannery work. Northern Sacramento Valley, we're cannery workers, pickers and cannery workers. I grew up with Punjabis, Portuguese, Italians, Mexicans, Anglos, where in the cannery, you became family. In the cannery, at lunchtime, everybody had their lupias or tacos or lasagna, whatever, and we fused an American culture together. And in that sense, the eye that I was always different, inclined towards the dreams, always inclined towards the fantasies and dreaming of other worlds, what I could do, and what were the possibilities. Everybody around me always was telling me what we couldn't do. And what I remember, first time after I was married young, but I had never been in a deli before. Because my dad always told us that people like us didn't go in delis. So being of the rebellious nature I was, I wanted to go into a deli. So I asked my wife, would you take me into one of these delis? And she goes, are you an idiot? What are you talking about? I go, can we go in? And she goes, do you have dollars? And I go, well, of course I do. She goes, well, then you can go in. So it started this exploration in the world, a multicultural exploration, trying to find the humanity in everybody, in all things, studying and learning. I eventually went off to art school and college, began a young family and so forth, and still I was radicalized real early in my life, so I began a march towards transformation and revolutionary change very early. I've been to Cuba, Russia, China, Nicaragua, El Salvador, Guatemala, learning revolutionary culture, because it was just important for me. It was part of the learning. Then I began to see ethnic studies programs as potentials for educated people and for creating social change in education. I am an educator. I still continue to. I took the day off today to be here, to work with the mind, and to work with education, and to work with the ability to know things. As growing up in a rural situation, we were just assumed we were peasants. We didn't know anything. No one asked us anything. You just got along. But I had an inquisitive mind. I wanted to know things, how things worked, where we lived, and who we were a part of, those kinds of things. So ethnic studies, Rudy, give me the light when we're ready. So in ethnic studies, I was able to fuse my creative nature, my educational nature, and my activist nature all in one area, because young minds were like a blank canvas. We could explore things, and we could do things, and we could change and grow. And so I did that until I would say mid-70s, until it got to be really politically hot for me. And my wife said, I think it's time we go back home. We have kids. You need to take a break. I'll go to work, and you be like John Lennon. You be a house husband. And so we did that. We moved back to Sacramento. So then I took time, read the newspaper, and there it was. I had heard of this RCAF before. I'm not a founding member. I'm a joining member. And they had a tortilla art show. And I go, these are people that I could relate to. I had known of them before in different things throughout Northern California, but really coming home, and since the valley was my home, and they were mainly from other places, I wanted to be a part and have a history of coming from the valley. You know, this is our valley. I knew the valley. I knew the rocks. I knew the rivers. I knew the wind currents. I knew all that. And then in working with the group, it just was like coming home, finding true north again, finding a direction, and giving a place for me to contribute to as well. And what was important in the contributing was I was an up-and-coming artist and very recognized and very collectible and all of that stuff. And I was gaining a name and reputation and all that, but it was all meaningless to me. I didn't know any other way. And my desire was always to give my art to communities, to people, to causes, to schools, to churches, and I'm still that way today. I work with a lot of groups, working with them to bring the creativity forth. And so they gave me the opportunity to do that. That's what I'm doing here today. You know, it is an honor to be with all of these folks here. You know, I feel like they're my family. This is one of my last works, not my last works. It was 5 murals back, but because I work every day. I carry working class values. I work every day. I pack a lunch still to go to my studio. I work, you know. And so this is at the Golden One Center, one of the murals that I did with Juanicia Rosco and Esteban Villa and our groups, and it was mainly our families. Our families are all adults and people of their own, and even my grandkids work on this project. With the butterfly was the metamorphosis, the transformation and change that we're seeing in our society. If you look around now, we're changing. Something's happening here. I don't make judgments whether it's good or bad, but I go with that change. And so that's what that butterfly represents. The changing of forms, the caterpillar becomes the chrysalis, and then the chrysalis becomes the butterfly, and the butterfly flies away. But it's all one being, you know, and so it's kind of like us. How can we come from an ancient past, go through a transformative middle era, fly in the Renaissance as Chicanos, and where are we going? What are we doing? And that's where I look to all of you. You're the future. And like Juanita said, I'm here. Anything I can do to assist you, to help you, just find me and ask me, and I'll never say no. I may say, give me a break, you know, let me rest for a few days. Yeah, so thank you.
Thank you, Stan. And like he's mentioned, this is one of his pieces over there at the Golden One Center.
278 individual hand art, made and fused together. That's one story tall, 1,788 pounds. Wow. It took 6 months, 2 years of planning, 6 months of execution. Yeah, it's there.
Thank you, Stan. Next is one of your counselors from this area, right?
Right.
Turlock?
Tracy.
Sorry.
Close.
But anyway, without further ado, this is when he was a little younger. He had just gotten out of Vietnam. He had joined the Brown Berets.
That's not me laying down. That's me right here on the right. Right here, right.
Here,
What's that? Oh no, that's fine.
that's him right there, up here.
A couple of years ago.
And you might want to tell them the little story about this right here.
Yeah,
This was at what,
72.
72?
Chicano moratorium.
Chicano moratorium.
Yeah. Okay. What's his name?
Rudy.
Richard Soto. And my hey, now I know who I am. My life has been really different, and when I look back, it primarily has been impacted by death. Okay, and it's really ironic the way things happen in my life. And the other day, Eddie Ramirez and I decided to start working on a project called the Chicanos on the Bataan Death March, because most people know about the Bataan Death March in the Philippines. I don't know what that has to do with the RCAF, but there's no mention of the Chicanos that were there, even though there was a Coast Artillery unit out of New Mexico. But I picked up this little book, The 5 People You Meet in Heaven. So I know what you're talking about. Okay? Every day we're getting closer to heaven. So I owe anybody a debt to let me know so I can get into those pearly gates. But my life has been impacted by death. And I've always seemed to have survived it and gone on. In 1947, my father was killed in a car accident, taking his mother back to Mexicali. And I was 3 years old, so that makes me 49 now. And never had a father growing up. And my father, contrary to everybody else's, they came to my dad prior to 47. He was a paymaster as part of the Baracero program in a Tracy area. And so I don't have a history of working in the fields except for myself when I was in high school. But my father was the paymaster, and he would pay all the people that were working in the fields. So that was one extremely traumatic experience. In 1962, I was a junior in high school, and we were out fooling around, and I was in a car wreck in Livermore, and that car wreck killed 4 young people, and I got to spend several months in the hospital recuperating. And you know, eventually physically I recuperated. Mentally, I've never recuperated. It's one of those things, if any of you have ever been involved in something like that, it never leaves you. There is not a day that goes by when I don't think about those young people that died. So as a result, I graduated from high school in 1963, and in 1964, I signed up for the military. Now, who reads a newspaper, right? Nobody reads a newspaper. So I didn't know that there was a war going on, and I just signed up for the military and became mental. So I get to boot camp, and they say, "What do you want to be?" I says, "Well, I changed my mind. Can I go home?" They said, "No. You can't go home. So what do you want to be?" So I'm going like, "I don't know. I know I don't want to be here. Give me a list." So they give me a list, and I'm going down the list, and I see nurse. Okay, I see nursing. Now, what the hell? What chingon like me is going to be a nurse? I'll be a nurse. Okay. What was happening? What was happening to me right there? That car wreck. That car wreck. Even though there was no guilt, there was no blame, I was still thinking of those young people and what can I do in my life to make up for that? So I became a nurse. They sent me to Oakland. They put me on a geriatric ward. What's a geriatric ward? Well, it's people like me. You know, they have a cute little nurse, you know, wiping your babas and cleaning your nalgas and all that. And I says, you know what? I don't want to do this. This doesn't sound like what I signed up for. So I told them, I want to work in surgery. What? Yeah, I want to, you know, like cut people open. And they go, okay. So they gave me surgical, and they said, you have to sign up for another year. And this is where I started taking control of my life. And I said, no, you give me surgical, and you send me wherever you want to. And this is when I learned about Vietnam, because that's where they sent me. So in 1966, I was part of a special medical surgical unit that went to Vietnam, was attached to the Marine Corps, even though I was Navy, attached to the Marine Corps, and helicopters would drop our young men into combat. Of course, you know, you drop them into combat, hell yeah, they're gonna get shot up. The same helicopter would bring them back to us. We had to try to stabilize them, and then they would send them anywhere in the world depending on their condition. Now there's some things that began to happen there. One is that I was working with doctors, and they were mentoring me and always telling me, man, you know, you're a good worker. You know, you should consider maybe a career in medicine. So I thought about that. 6 months later, the military had decided that we should not be in that kind of an environment for more than 6 months, otherwise we might go crazy. See, I proved them wrong. And so at the end of 6 months, the rest of my unit flew to Da Nang on a helicopter, got on a plane and came home. I said, no, I'm staying here, okay? Our young men were being torn apart by bullets and bombs and whatever by the hundreds. I said, I'm staying here. You trained me, I'm here, I'm not going home. 3 months later, the shore patrol came, and they always pick these big guys. And they picked me up, and they said, you're going home. And they threw me on an airplane, and next day I was in San Diego. But what happened in Vietnam, in addition to these other traumatic experiences, I was the only Hispanic in that unit. This black guy was the only black person in that unit. Everybody else was white. One day we had like 20 non-ambulatory patients. And one of the warrant officers says, okay, you guys, there was about 10 of us, have to go and get trays for these guys that can't walk. Okay, I'm cool. I'm down for that. The black guy, he's down for that. The white guy said, that's for niggers and wetbacks. We're not going. I said, oh no, oh no, oh no. That was when I took a stand and said, no, this is coming to a stop. And I says, I will go and I will bring 3, maybe 5 trays, but no more than that. The officer there says, well, you need to get trays. I says, see those white boys over there? They need to get trays too. I'm not going. He says, you're defying a direct order. I says, no, I'm not. I'm getting 5 trays. He says, but we need to feed everybody. See those white boys over there? They need to go. He says, I could put you up for a court-martial. A court-martial in a war zone is bang, they can shoot you. Okay? This is a war zone. And I says, you know what? You know I'm right. You know that I'm right, and I'm gonna go get 5 trays, and you better do something with those other guys. Fortunately for me, he backed off. I don't even know if the other guys went and got trays or not, but I didn't get court-martialed. So 3 months later, I'm on a plane in Da Nang, and I come home, and I always thought my punishment for going AWOL in Vietnam was they sent me to the Philippines to run a delivery room. So while I was there, I noticed that having a baby in the daytime, call Soto. Having a baby in the afternoon, call Soto. Having a baby at night, call Soto. And I'm going like, how can I get something out of this, right? So I put in for night duty, because night duty, there's nobody but me, and 1 or 2 patients. And I got me a dictionary and a desk, and for the next 2 years, I studied. I taught myself to get ready for Delta College when I came home. So in 1968, I came home. Came over to Delta College, and I started my career. In 1969, I was the first med shop president at Delta College. I was also the first director of student affairs. And, you know, I was going to totally get involved in everything that I could, because I had decided I've seen enough with death I'm going to take a stand. I'm going to do something. And so I started it off with that. And so because of I want to just say this, that we didn't have the benefit in 1968, 69, 70, and I'm not sure when my tocayo, Richard Rios, came to Delta. In 1972, okay? And the students from Delta, from that time on, was with his friend, El Ortiz. Delta College had the best Chicano instructors anywhere. Anywhere. Okay, so thank you. Thank you. And when did you come? When did you come? Did you come to Delta? You came to Delta?
No, Sac City.
Oh, Sac City. Okay. Oh, Raul or Rasul. Yeah. Okay. So in Stockton there was also created Artistas del Valle, and you have Rudy Garcia, Richard Rios. Okay, and their baby student, Luis Lua. Okay. And I want to mention, as was mentioned before, that a lot of our people are not here anymore. And I want to just take a second for probably one of the individuals that had more influence on young artists, Raul Mora, who just passed away about a month ago. A good friend of mine, he was also a collector. So anyway, I come to Delta and I'm here and I joined the Brown Berets and we're kicking ass all over, you know, and doing all kinds of stuff. And Sacramento has started this program called the Mexican American Education Project. And so they're recruiting Chicano students, but they don't want Chicano students that are just going to be sitting, you know, learning all their stuff on what's that television program? Flex or something. They want people that are doing something. So they say, hey, you guys got a Chicano activist down there who's getting into everything? You go, yes, we do. They go, well, we want to offer him a scholarship. Please take him. So I got a scholarship to Sac State. I got a full ride. So now I'm on a full ride. I had been working full time for Safeway, where the Juanita used to come and pick it, and I'm going to college full time, and plus getting myself in trouble in the community. And so we're going. So I go to Sacramento with Esteban Arvizu, who was the director of the Mexican Education Project, and I got a stipend, you know, to go to school. And I said, oh, I like that, thank you. For the first time, I didn't work. I quit working for Safeway on my GI Bill that I used for the first time, and on my stipend, I devoted myself to the community. So there was a, you know, because we're gang-oriented, right? Wherever we go, there's a little clica, and we're there. So there was a table over at the student union in Sacramento, and I saw these teachers that were like this guy here scribbling on a notepad, and I'm looking at what they're doing. I go, what's that guy doing? He goes, well, that's Esteban Villa. I go, oh, okay. And the other one next to him, he goes, well, that's Jose Montoya. And so little by little, I learned about them. And so when they left the table, I grabbed their artwork, and I still have it in my filing cabinet. But I met Jose Montoya and Esteban Villa. And in 1972, in 71, Ruben Salazar, the journalist who was murdered by the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department in Los Angeles, man, they just like woke everybody up. In 72, when they had the second one, or the next one, Esteban Villa had come back from the first one. He was all beat up. I says, damn, Villa, did you go to the wrong nightclub or what? He says, no, pinche placa, man. They were like beating us with their billy clubs. And, oops.
You want to go back?
You got to go back the other way. There we go. So above my right shoulder, I think you can see a nightclub. Okay. So so I go like, wow. I says, you know, I'm the guy that has all the battlefield medical training. I need to be there, right? I need to be there. I don't need to be at home reading a book or something. I need to be there where my head is getting clubbed. So I took my Unit 1 kit, which is like right off of my right shoulder and almost on the guy's body there. It's a minor, I could do minor surgery on you. So I took that with me, and when the shit started happening, there I am right out in the middle of the whole mess of patching up people. And I run across this guy. And one of the things I won't forget is that there were adults And I told them, come and help me. We got to get this guy out of here. Because in the military, we don't leave our people behind. We bring them out. And so I said, they kept running. No, the police are shooting, the police. Well, come on, man. So these little kids, they came up and they said, we'll help you, mister. So they grabbed a leg, they grabbed an arm. And they go like, what's the matter with this guy? There's no blood. He had a little piercing hole in his chest, okay? And that's shrapnel, okay? So when a bullet or something blows up, little pieces with velocity go flying. They go, and it had penetrated. And he actually was bleeding internally. But I had seen that in Vietnam. And so I said, we got to get this guy out rather quick. And I go, oh, thank God there's a policeman. We take him to the policeman, he says, drop him. I said, he's going to die. He says, drop him. We dropped him, he died. We got arrested, myself and the little kids, and the police department regretted that because I turned the little kids loose on them in their police station, and they finally took us out in LA and dropped us somewhere. So anyway, I came back to Sacramento, and with all my medical training, I had been pre-med. In '72, there were riots going on at Sacramento High School, Hiram Johnson, Luther Burbank, and whatever the other one is. And the kids came to the college and they said, man, we really need some help. Everybody's fighting. You can't go anywhere. You get billy club and all that. And so I says, well, I guess that's where I need to be. So I went out there. And I had already earned an AA degree, a bachelor's degree, my master's degree, and a teaching credential. And I go, so yeah, you know what? I'm going to go out there. So I went out and started working with these high school kids. And I'm glad I did because it changed my whole life. It changed my whole life. At the end of the year, I transferred from Sacramento, went to San Francisco, and started working as a bilingual counselor. I also got on the Lau Nichols task force, which was a remediation task force for the lawsuit against the district. And also, Esteban Arvizu had hired me to be his administrative assistant. And so every Friday, I was flying out somewhere. I would go out, talk with communities, find out what their problems were, come back and try to come up with some remediation. And I started a master's degree in counseling. And then they started riots in Tracy. I mean, what the hell? What happened is that Juanita and that Cesar Chavez guy were coming into Tracy to organize, and the farmers and their kids didn't like it, so they were bringing it to school. And of course the Chicano said, chale, man, you want chingazos, you're going to get them. So they had an annual chingazo day. And so one of the counselors quit. The students told me, hey, apply. There's an opening. So I applied. And they said, what skills do you have? Well, I worked at riot schools in Sacramento. I worked at riot schools in Daly City. I got something you guys need. So I got hired. And I stayed here for like almost 40 years. I retired about 10, 15 years ago. And then I moved to Stockton. So the last thing is, all the way along the line, I don't know why, except that maybe before Elder Keys, there were no Chicano books here at Delta College. And I was also always desperately, I think you had mentioned looking for literature or wanting to know your history, and I wanted to know my history, so I started collecting books. And in 1975, I rented what used to be Yolanda's Panaderia on East Main. And we rapidly outgrew that building. 3 years ago, I purchased what used to be the Wig Place, again on East Main Street, down by the Heritage Center, and it's this 3-story building. And we're making a museum, a library, and an archival center. Now, what kind of stuff are we putting in the archival center? Somebody mentioned breakfast for niños. This was a program started by that RCAF, 1978. We have the original documents. Somebody mentioned these people, Greek, Ware, and whatever, RCAF. We started collecting their stuff. This is 2010. La Raza, Galeria de la Raza in Sacramento. This is 2005. We have all this stuff. But I think one of the biggest things that, when Cesar Chavez died, Jose Montoya and Olivia Castellano, and you were involved in this too, right? And people don't even know this. They don't even know this, but the Sacramento Symphony conducted a symphony for Cesar Chavez. When I went there, at the end of the production, everybody's leaving, all the white people throwing this stuff on the floor. Okay? Little pack rat here. I went around, I picked this stuff up, and I saved them. But one of the things that I think, and this is going to be it, one of the things that I can really, really appreciate for Jose Montoya was his poetry. Okay, his poetry. Two of his most famous poems. One is La Jefita, and the other one is El Louis. And Chicano poetry is very unique. It's not like Mexican poetry. It's not like white poetry. It's Raza poetry. It's where we put our feelings into our poetry, and people who have shared our experience can relate to it. So here, for example, is La Jefita. When I remember the campos y las noches and the sounds of those nights in carpas o vagones, I remember my jefita's palote. Click, clock, click, clack, clock. Y su tosita. I swear she never slept. Reluctant awakening a la medianoche y la luz prendida. A noisy cholo missing the basin. Now, I don't know where you're going to find that in traditional. Un chorro. Yeah, okay. Everyday stuff. ¿Qué horas son, mamá? Es tarde, mi hijito. Cover up, your little brother. Y yo con pena, but too sleepy. Well, at the end of the semester, every Chicano that was in that class became a poet. Okay? And of course, I fell for the same thing. And except that mine's good. No. One of my favorite was because it covers pretty much my defiance and kind of like what I saw. And this one, all I have to do is come back to this one, and I get recharged, okay? And this one is called Choice. When by choice, you choose the avenue of poverty, as opposed to poverty choosing you. Just look at what my mind can't contemplate, the wrath of human fate, of poor and hungry children running to and fro, and all that we so grown up be, and all that we have learned, of cleanliness, of self-respect, of pride for what we own. But do these people, this poor and lonely rat, not have pride of their own? It boggles the mind to stop and think that filth and ill and torn and poor are sometimes pride is worn. The vicious cycle on its way from birth to death not take. To be, to breed, to continue on with this human fate called life is bread. The mixing of and question that, not races I do say, but the ignorance of intellect and the lack of social grace. Then hate and eyes of all have nots for the hate of those like you. If hate don't kill, then don't you fret, for the human wrath then will. This was written in 1981. So as a result of that, my last project, we're talking about last project, my last project is a Chicano Research Center. And we have un chingo of shit there, man. You know, we have a lot of stuff. So I hope to see some of you there and get involved. Thank you, Rudy.
For those of you that are about to leave, I'd like to thank you for being here, and Richard Rios has something to say.
Richard Soto. In the years that I taught here at Delta College, 33 years of Latin studies, I cannot tell you how many students Richard sent us from Tracy High School here at Delta College, Chicano students. And they were some of the best students, some of the heavyweight students that I've ever run into. And thank you for that, Richard. They would show up, Chicano students at Delta College. Mr. Rios here. Richard Soto sent me. Richard Soto sent me. I can't tell you how many times I said that, Richard.
My students wanted to know history. So they said, well, you teach it. So I went to adult school in Tracy and put together a class. So my students, before they graduated, they had a full cycle of Chicano history. And so they would go to different colleges, Turlock or wherever, and the people would tell them, hey, be careful, they're Soto trained.
I think Alina has something to say.
No, if I do anything, I'm gonna play this.
Okay, go ahead and play it.
Okay. Is this ready to go, Sala?
Yeah.
Let's see.
Suffer my shame. Be with silence. Tell me about it. That still remains the only poem today I can recite by heart. I loved it at 50, I still love it. It saved my life at 15, a little barrio welfare class. India in San Jose, California. Just as it saves my life today, all the time I think about that. I used it as an editorial principle when I had Mondo Publications, a little Rasquache publication that Jose Manuel gave some poems for in the 70s and the 80s. Because I always wanted to tell people, man, you gotta walk around because you better take it like Jose Montoya was my favorite Chicano poet. Anybody who asks me, that's what I said. Who's your favorite Chicano poet? Jose Montoya, Jose Montoya, Jose Montoya. I am here today with 5 books in print because of Jose Montoya. I am here today with college education because of Jose Montoya. I am here today alive and not on drugs or alcohol or anything else because of Jose Montoya. I am here today from Orgullo with pride, my Chicanismo and my Indigenismo. I want to read a couple of lines from a poem that Jose was blessed us with. This is from Mambo, 1982, Los De or Us. Los De or Us. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I want to read some very important lines because it's still relevant today. Los De or Us. We were once a principled people. Ser Chuecos was never our style. Los Chuecos were always los otros, los they. Antes, they put us in MR classes. Today, they do it in 2 languages. Only the system remains the same, but the faces are our faces. And the faces are our faces, and brown elected officials that make and pass laws to destroy us and Panama. Once we were a principled people. Today, we have very little left that's still ours. Today, we have nothing to lose. Only the confusion can contain us. Dispel the confusion, compañero, y chucha con los de, 'cause los de are us.
Well, some of us. Anyway, I don't know. I'm sure you want to close it. It's noon.
Yeah, it's
And I know some of you have to go to your class. Just want to say one thing. When I first met Juan, he asked me, well, who are you? And I go, well, just a student. Well, you don't say anything, you don't talk, you don't do. No, I just silkscreened, right? That was my thing. My books that I read were popular science, popular mechanics. That I could grasp. But anyway, with that said, I just want to thank all of you, Sala.
Well,
Alina,
are
for-
there any questions?
Sure, but I think
Anybody
they
have
want to
any-
close up. Is there anybody that has any questions? Anybody that wants to? Oh yeah, okay, go ahead, go for it.
I was really interested
About the what?
Invisible Mexico.
Oh, yeah.
And I just wanted to hear a little bit more about your experience and how you came up with that.
Well, over time, because college, and then I taught Chicano studies at Casunas River College. And then I lived my life, and I didn't know my history. No one could teach me my history. I went to a university, it has one of the greatest libraries called the Bancroft, named after an anthropologist. It's the greatest collection of Western history probably in this country. And when we were going through all this at Berkeley, and I wanted to know more about Mexico, I tried to find a historian who could be because I'm a history major, I got my degree in American history. I could not find one faculty member who could guide me in the study of Mexicans in the United States, which is what I wanted to know. The only one was a guy named Pitt, who taught California history. And in his book, there's a little section, so I learned more about how we lost. I didn't learn anything else about us as a people. And so it's just like we are invisible people in this society. There's a book by an African American called The Invisible Man. It's the same idea. You're there, people see you, but they don't see you. They don't see you as who you are and where you come from. So, I mean, I could go on, but that's basically the idea that no one knew who I was. What? Are you Spanish? No, I'm Mexican. Oh, I'm sorry. Are you Italian? Are you Greek? Are you, and I look at faces, wonderful faces. I tell you, as a visual artist, I like to draw faces, an incredible array of faces. For me, I sit here and I see a whole bunch of Mexicans because I know what to look for. I know who I am. I know who we are. So as I go, I was just in Europe. I told you I could go on. I was just in Europe, and every time I saw someone who looked Mexican, I'd ask him, ¿De dónde es? Where did you come from? Because I'm sure they were going to say Mexico. No, soy de Colombia. No, soy de Nicaragua. No, soy de... But they were Latinos in that. I mean, what do you have to know to know people? Now I get a little confused because Iranians and Saudis, they have a little bit of us, we have a little bit of them, and blah, blah, blah.
I wanted to add something to what he says.
No.
This is important. You make them know who you are. At Sex State, we took over the library because we kept asking the bookstore to get books related to us, literature related to us, and they wouldn't. So we had no alternative but to take over the library, go in, have a sit-in, lock all the doors, knock all the books down that they had, So if it comes to things like that, you got to do things like that to make them notice you.
What's your name?
My name's Alexia.
Thank you for your question.
Thank you for your question.
I want to, you don't have to go to Sacramento. We have it all here at 415 East Main Street. And I actually, when I started working with my high school student, I created my own psychology tool, and it was called Self-Esteem and Identity Formation Through Literature. We're not identical. We're not identical. But I have such a wide grasp, like my tocado here, Richard Rios, of the literature, that I can sit and talk with people and say, you know what, you should read this book. And then they come back for another one.
Thank you, Alexa.
Well, thank you, everyone. I wish we had more time. This has been amazing. Our wish for all of you is to take a piece of this information, this history, and take it with you. May it move you forward and really have something meaningful for you. We are doing this to make sure that their experiences and their history is passed on to the young Chicanos, because we want you to move it forward, movimiento, and to be activists in your own way. And so this is just a touch of this beautiful, amazing dedication of their life. You got to experience this. May this touch you in some way. And please share with your family, your friends, this experience that you've had. This is memorable. You will think back 20 years from now and say, I was in front of some great people here. And yes, Richard Soto's got, research. We got to promote that. Definitely invite people there, because you're going to keep that alive for our young people to visit.
I'll keep it alive for about 10 more years.
Yeah.
I don't know who to do it after that. But I've got
So,
10 years left.
with that being said, I just want to say a quick plug for something that's happening in Sacramento, October 15th. Right, Stan? It's going to be an opportunity to, it's a memorable, what is it exactly?
A memorial for the RCAF murals. We're going back and visiting them all, telling the story of the experience of them.
Yeah. That's going to be in Sacramento, October 15th at Luna's Cafe. So I was part of that planning. It was pretty exciting. So with that being said, I'm going to end up by just giving everyone, our presenters, a token of our gratitude, appreciation for you being here. This is our, from Delta College.
We have
You got one?
Yeah.
You got one? And for you?
Thank you.
You got one? And then, for you, sir, for those of you that you are here at Delta College. So you are some great people here. Thank you for being here, David. Thank you. Gracias. Okay. Sarah, did you want to say anything in closing? Okay. Then with that, thank you all so much. Indigenous Day is happening right now in the plaza. We have tacos for sale if you want to join us. And thank you again for being here.
This event was supported and brought to us by the Chicanx Latinx Faculty Task Force. You can find out more about the Chicanx Latinx Faculty Task Force by going to the Delta College website and searching for our name. We were also sponsored by the Cultural Awareness Program, which is a group on campus that funds a lot of different events like this, some exciting ones that are still coming up. But I also want to encourage everyone who's out there to enroll in Delta College and take a class with us. You can learn more about Mexican American history and the Chicano experience in a Mexican American history class. Or you can learn more by taking an ethnic studies with a focus on Chicano history and culture. Additionally, we have new classes this semester and next, including Chicano art. So please visit our website, enroll today.